Johnny!
I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord! I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Welcome to Box Office Pulp. I'm Mike. And welcome to another thrilling mini bop edition of What Mike got to watch this week. That's not the official title or anything, but I'll still probably copyright it all the same, so don't steal it. But this time, I'm here to talk about The Retaliators, a really cool little interesting indie revenge flick starring Michael Lombardi that I'm going to avoid giving any spoilers of or anything, but as I usually do with these, but it was definitely worth talking about. It's written by the Gear Brothers, and it's actually inspired by an event that unfortunately happened to their sister, and they, in response, ended up writing this revenge film that ended up getting on the blacklist. It went out to Michael Lombardi as they wrote it for him, and funny enough, it was directed by the duo of Bridget Smith and Samuel Gonzalez. But actually, due to COVID, Lombardi actually directed some scenes himself, just due to the nature of trying to make an indie film at the time, and ended up coming across the desk of Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein, who, of course, score Stranger Things. So it has an amazing throwback score like that by them, because they ended up loving it, and it has some fun, very random cameos in it. I think this is probably the best film that has ever featured the lead singer of Papa Roach. Maybe the only film to ever feature the lead singer of Papa Roach. So also Tommy Lee shows up in it. Just due to some producers and directors having worked with them in the past. But anyway, that's the basic setup of the film. Like I said, it's a lot like The Crow, the actual comic, inspired by real pain and horror. But Lombardi plays a pastor whose daughter is murdered, and in much a similar way to, I think, the book Death Wish. It's about grief and revenge intermingling, and what can that do to transform you. It's a very strong through line in the film is violence versus peace, and really ruminating on that concept of being lost in grief. And it has, it has a really unique twist that I don't want to give away in this, just because I didn't know it coming up. So when it popped up, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And I would almost like to see this done over again with a larger budget to really expand on the idea. Because I do feel like some of the messaging gets a little bit muddled in the end. It's still solid, but it goes to this place of almost as if the act of vengeance has created a hell. It's very like Dante's hell in that you go through into a circle of hell, almost one of your own making, and the idea of the fantasy of violence versus the reality of violence, and how that can just really take over and destroy, but even transform a person for the better. Like you taking this very peaceful pastor and transforming him over the course of the movie to try to find almost this middle ground between ultra violence, revenge taking, and someone who just stands up for themselves versus only ever taking a peaceful approach. Also, this is random, but Brian O'Halloran from Clerks appears in it in one scene as an asshole, and it is maybe my favorite cameo ever because, oh hey Dante, just popping up to be a dick about a Christmas tree. Oh, this is a Christmas film, by the way, Christmas revenge film, which is a genre I didn't know I needed more of, but here we are. But Anyway, all that aside, Brian O'Halloran not supposed to be here today aside. There's a couple, like, personal mistakes I think I wish the film didn't make. Just mostly the opening, I think, is a mistake. And I think if you can get past that, just wait for the movie has an opening where we are flashed forward towards the end. And I do think that's a little bit of a hurdle to get over. So when watching it, kind of like keep that in mind, like just forget about it, just move on past it once it gets there. It has some really great like splatterpunk effects. Like it gets really like neon gory, which is just a lot of fun. But once again, also kind of going into, it's also kind of hellish, the violence. So it has like that push and pull of, it's a lot of fun to see this gore. Also, it's like forced violence, which kind of like plays into the larger themes of the film, and also the obviously inspiration and pain and probably anger that created it, and the idea of, without saying spoilers, the idea of there being different forms of group counseling. Let's put it that way. Peaceful acceptance group counseling, and then something darker and greater and more torrentially barbaric. But yeah, I don't want to say too much and give it away or anything. I just wanted to give like a really quick little rundown review of it. I can really see everybody involved in this movie maybe being able to take off a bit based off of it. I really like to see what else the Gear Brothers could come up with a little bit more. I think there's a really good hint of things to come. It's, just well made all around. Some distracting musical interludes, but it's made from like a music production company, so these things happen. Whatever, sometimes it's just whatever gets the movie made, right? So definitely a film with a really great like personal connection, and you can tell Lombardi, he puts on a really great performance. I've always been a fan of Lombardi. I think he's fairly underrated. And you can tell he cares. Like, he came on, ended up coming on as a producer. Like I said, he directed, ended up, like, co-directing or just directing some scenes out of necessity. And he puts in a very uncharacteristic performance in a lot of ways. But I always like Lombardi because he has very much an everyman sort of quality. And once again, this just makes me want, like, a more, like, what Joe Carnahan wanted out of whenever he was making his Death Wish remake of, like, let's see what happens when you put, like, Paul Rudd in a Death Wish movie. Like, let's watch violence, like, destroy somebody. Even though this isn't about that, doesn't go that way. Like I said, it almost has more to do with James O'Barr's The Crow, where it's this gray middle ground between how violence can destroy and how revenge can be cathartic. So, Retaliators, like I said, starring Michael Lombardi, written by the Gear Brothers. I'd actually hopefully maybe be able to bring them on the show sometime. I wouldn't mind talking to them a little bit, but it is available now on VOD, so you should go ahead and check that out if you can. I think everyone would be able to get something out of it. I think you enjoy it, or at least just be able to see like a pretty cool little indie flick with It's going to show off, I think, some talent to keep an eye on. So, still in early access, but probably coming to physical release soon, so check it out. But before we get going, I just want to say this episode of Box Office Pulp is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped.com. I want you to go on Manscaped, use code BOXOFFICEPULP during checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. Just get yourself, your downstairs, your nether regions. They want to be coddled. They want to be loved. And the best way to do that is with Manscaped.com. Either get yourself some of the greatest underwear I have ever worn, or let's smooth out your balls. Let's smooth them out. Let's get in there. Let's get some. They have some great oils for them. They have the most comfortable clippers I've ever experienced. Use them everywhere. be hairless like a seal. But Christmas is coming up, holidays, so Thanksgiving, hell. Box code BoxOfficePulp, manscaped.com. Use code BoxOfficePulp. 20% off. Free shipping to you. It's a steal. It's a deal. Code BoxOfficePulp, manscaped.com. And if you want to listen to more Box Office Pulp, BoxOfficePulp.com. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Podcasts. We are on Stitcher. We're in all the various pod-catching places. And, of course, follow us along on Twitter at Box Office Pulp, Facebook.com/BoxOfficePulp. I'm at Lucky Deck Napier on the Twitter, and I'm getting the hell out of here.
This is Box Office Pulp Guy, and this has been a Pulp Podcast production. Now please, 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 put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger and say goodnight.
And now, on with the show.